I guess you kind of scared yourself. You turn and run. But if you have a change of heart, Ricky, don't lose that number. You don't want to call nobody else. Send it off in a letter to yourself. Ricky, don't lose that number. It's the only one you want. You might use it if you feel better when you get home. I have a friend in town, he's heard your name. We can go out driving on slow hand road. We could stay inside and play games, I don't know. And you could change your
And good evening, good evening, good evening, good evening. It is 7:45 p.m. on Thursday, November 13th, 2025. My name is Mark Kulak, KULACZ. This is Houstonic.live, a research and archival show with a particular focus on overdose awareness, coming at you from the United States of America. I broadcast from about 30 or so minutes from the city of Boston. I grew up in Connecticut, in the northeastern part of the United States. My quick CV, if you're interested, my quick background. I grew up in Connecticut. Much of my family were in law enforcement, actually. A couple city engineers as well, or police detectives, some manufacturing, a lot of nurses. Very pedestrian as far as that type of stuff goes, at least as far as the community that we see right now on the internet of podcasters, where it's amazing how many people had parents on Hollywood, Broadway, dancing, officials from other countries. For example, Sukrit Bhakti, I keep wanting to say Bok Choy, doctor who is of Thai ancestry in Germany. Who would have known that both his parents were diplomats and that he was born in Washington, D.C.? I mean, it's not like he's hiding it, but it's just one of those things. Anyways, I went to University of Connecticut. I started my master's at MIT, but only briefly. And I worked for 23 years in the tech industry, half of it approximately as an engineer in the data storage industry. The other half, same industry, but as a product marketing professional, sales engineer, tech trainer, and competitive intelligence analyst, which sounds very spooky, and it would be something that would involve crime and conspiracy and espionage, but it really just means being able to put two sales sheets together and put out a sales guides. I wish it meant a little bit more. I wish the stuff I was able to do and I was able to create was used more, but companies, they really just want to sell. They just want to hit their numbers, and, well, things just aren't what they are anymore. And it was the fatal drug epidemic within the United States of America that approximately almost 10 years ago right now started to raise our family's awareness as to why these things weren't getting more visibility at a time when it was already an epidemic, but it was still far less of a problem than it is now. And some other issues related to chronic illness. I started to get online. I was told to go to Twitter. I went to Twitter, and, well, one thing led to the next. And before I know it, starting back in 2019, I said, because I can see other people making careers online. You know, they would become citizen journalists, and apparently, I guess, bills can get paid, and you can still, if you work hard, maybe get enough money to pay for your mortgage and have health insurance and everything else. And, well, that just didn't come to pass because I didn't realize that most of it was fake. That's not a weak way of being able to put a pitch in for more assistance. It really isn't. It's actually to help you. It's to help you and your own journey. If you're watching this right now, it's meant to help you, because I started off not as a doing this. I mean, there were years, 2-3 years, I was on Twitter just, still tweeting more than I should have, starting to manage a research archive, trying to make some progress. And I was given a false illusion that there were other people that they were able to make this work out. I didn't know. I didn't know that they were false prophets. I didn't know that it wasn't real. It took me a long time to figure it out. So it's something for you to consider as well. This is a one-person operation. Much of my day is doing other day stuff. Everything from having to take the trash to the dump to maintain the house to do some small part-time jobs here or there and whatever, and keep the family going, etc. So that's kind of what led me here. Houstonic is the name of a river in the state of Connecticut. I've always loved the name, always loved the word, and I grew up near there, and many generations of my family grew up near there as well. So on today, November 13th, 2025, I thought I would cover a couple of the news articles of the day that you probably haven't seen elsewhere. And I know what you have seen elsewhere, and I'm not even going to say it. I probably will eventually say it eventually, but I'm going to try not to, at least for a little bit, because it's the only thing you're allowed to see if you go onto mainstream media. You can see one story and one story only, and it's just clobbering the internet right now. Almost nothing else can be seen right now, and it is disheartening that some stories are just so dominating. So I'm just going to go over another story that you probably haven't heard of today. And the fact that you haven't heard of this story today until now, or at least I'm sure most of you haven't, and this is something I've given updates on before, is in and of itself something that you can use as part of your journey in trying to understand what is going on right now. Because this should have been something that people should be lining up and begging to present to you. And the question is why? Why was it so buried? Why was it so buried? And you could probably see where this is going here. Episode 1404, I think. So today, actually this was yesterday, November 12th, hearings begin to finalize the Purdue Pharma $7.4 billion bankruptcy settlement plan. So Purdue Pharma is going through bankruptcy proceedings right now. It's also going through a reorganization. Purdue Pharma is the inventor, patent holder, and manufacturer of OxyContin, which is a painkiller. It's described as a painkiller, but it does contain an opioid in it as well. So it's a combination. It's an anti-inflammatory, acetaminophen, but also an opioid. And for many people, because this is just the way our biology is wired, it is addictive. Whether it's pure or whether it's synthetic, opioid it refers to the active ingredient which impacts the mind, which is inspired by, which comes from, or was made in the image of heroin and morphine, both of which come from poppy. Now, I don't understand all of the ways which it is manufactured synthetically. Sometimes the synthetic stuff is heavily purified but still involves a real poppy, but there's other ways to be able to manufacture ultra powerful opioid class pharmaceuticals, which involve no poppy at all, I believe. You may have heard of those things as fentanyl and carfentanil, two drugs which have roots going all the way back to World War II Germany and were used as tranquilizers for elephants and are often also used in hospice care, which means end-of-life care. They also have been used as part of executions. So when people have been put to death in a way which is considered to be more humane for crimes which they have been found guilty of, crimes which warrant the death penalty, fentanyl and carfentanil have been used. And as people have, throughout the 1990s, started to become more and more addicted to pain medicines because it's a lot easier to get addicted to opioids if you can just take a pill than it is if you have to inject yourself with heroin, because most people have an apprehension to injecting themselves, which is something I may actually choose to elaborate on here as well. We'll see. People started to become addicts, and the addict population slowly started to increase, and Purdue Pharma announced in the news story that you see right there, has no correlation at all to the story itself. Now I just lost my train of thought. Unfortunately, it's kind of late in the day to be doing this. And Purdue Pharma had made statements that OxyContin was not addictive. And they were able to make those statements based upon some evidence that they collected. Again, evidence can be the enemy. People see evidence and they think, oh, there must be truth. And if they see more evidence, they think, wow, it must really be true. And the more evidence you can make about something and push out there, the more people will believe it. If you put out enough videos and some books and some Substacks, okay, that tell people that the aliens have landed and they really are, building, they're taking over the government or something like that, people will believe it. People are suckered through the illusion of consensus, and the illusion of truth must be followed with lots of evidence. It's just like in early COVID. All of these podcasters came out suggesting that they had knowledge, expertise, and started talking about fern cleavage sites and binding domains and everything else, and they just talked for hours and hours, and no one could get a word in edgewise, so it was just assumed that it was the truth. Quantities of videos, thousands of videos, is in and of itself is not evidence of anything valuable. It could all be lies and nonsense. That's not to say that all evidence is inherently bad, but when it gets promoted and hyped up and pushed and amplified, etc., you have to ask questions. Anyways, Purdue Pharma said it wasn't addictive, and sure enough, more and more people began to become addicted. Now, OxyContin in the United States anyways, comes only with a prescription. There's limits on how much can be prescribed at a time. Some doctors have bent the rules a little bit and became known as pill mills. Either way, it's not cheap, even if you can get a prescription for it. So what has happened is, as people became more and more likely or in greater numbers addicted to opioids, they then sought other drugs. And once someone is truly addicted, they realize that then they can get a whole lot more opium if they were to go on the street and buy heroin than if they were to use Oxy. Oxy is actually expensive. It's another one of those things like, well, why? Because you have to take a lot of it to die. However, when you're buying illegal heroin on the streets, it can be mixed in with other things. Cheaper than heroin is fentanyl. So a lot of times someone would have searched for heroin and they are actually getting fentanyl, which is cut with other things. And fentanyl is so strong that if it's not cut properly, it can result in something which is lethal. So many people have died, not from OxyContin specifically, but because of addictions which started with OxyContin. And if it wasn't for the fact that there were drugs available on the streets which were lethal, many of the overdoses would have been avoided, the fatal overdoses anyways, which then begs the question, we are being told that there's drug dealers out there that are making money on fentanyl. And yeah, there are people who do buy fentanyl and are very careful with it, but you don't make a lot of money as a dealer if you kill people. So why is that mythology in and of itself allowed to persist? Except it is allowed to persist. And if it ever is brought up, it's always misrepresented as people in South America or China want to kill Americans. But again, that doesn't add up either. There's also a lie that many fentanyl precursors come from China, and maybe some have. But the ATF and even the FBI back in 2018 was stating that more and more of those components are coming from India. A topic which I'm going to expand upon in a little bit. Anyways, there was a charges brought against Purdue Pharma in 2006 and 2007, and then the for some reason the United States Department of Justice dropped the charges against Purdue Pharma back then. Now the total number of fatal drug overdoses in the United States of America in the year 1999 was around 18,500. Because more people were becoming addicted to OxyContin and then ultimately seeking other things, the total number of fatal drug overdoses in the United States was in the 30,000 range. It had gone up 50, 60% by 2007, I think, approximately. That is epidemic levels. Okay. If trust me, the news would be having a stage and all 1,000 alarm fire meltdown if 50,000 people died of the flu instead of 30,000 in 1 year. But we went from 20,000 fatal drug overdoses to 35,000, barely a peep. There was a little bit of news, Department of Justice, and then they dropped it. And then it got much worse during the Obama administration, and I mean much, much, much worse. Eventually, it was in the 50,000, 60,000. This is not a cumulative number. It was then at the 60, then the 70,000. We had years where there were over 3 times as many people dying in the Obama administration, and barely a peep. Barely a peep. And that is when my wife and I started to notice it, and we're going, why isn't anyone on the news talking about it? Why is this issue a hush-hush issue? Something's going on here. That is what compelled me to do this. I'm not an addiction counselor. I do not claim to be addiction counselor. I've seen some things work. I've seen some things not work. I encourage people to have Narcan available if they have children around or people in an area where they suspect it could be a problem, even if they don't know anyone at the moment who is dealing with addiction. That is why it is in my tagline, overdose awareness. I simply seek to have people aware of the problem and realize that the United States of America right now, 1 out of every 30 deaths this year and for each of the last several years, because we've had over 100,000 deaths a year right now from fatal drug overdoses, as opposed to 18,500, is a fatal drug overdose. We have about 3 million or so people dying of all causes. That's 1 out of every 30 deaths. That's a ridiculous number. But when you factor out the fact that most people who die or expected to die every year are elderly people, there's not many 90-year-olds dying of fentanyl overdoses. The reality is that of children being born today, if nothing were to change at these projections, 1 out of every 12 to 1 out of every 16 being born today will die before age 50 of a fatal drug overdose. The numbers right now are beyond horror in the United States of America. And it is the number one reason our life expectancy has gone down. Number one reason. And this has been silenced because they need that data to say we have a deadly novel virus. Or now maybe the vaccines are killing people because they have DNA contamination. These are the two stories which are going on right now. Actually, this is a good little highlight reel there. Let's just highlight a few things there because we have components
used to manufacture deadly synthetic opioids such as fentanyl and carfentanil coming to the United States from India, as reported by ATF and FBI reports back in 2018, although unfortunately these days they blame all of it on China. And also, curiously, we have an FBI
run by an Indian. That Indian man, he reported to another Indian DA in New York State, which is where he came from. We have an Indian Ro Khanna saying that we need to be focusing entirely on Epstein. We have another man who probably takes that money from that Indian man, Thomas Massey, saying we need to focus entirely on Epstein. No talk about an overdose epidemic. None. And now we have just this army of people which are just focusing entirely and only and solely on Epstein, with 100 to 120,000 people dying a year of a fatal drug overdose epidemic in the United States of America, which is killing our country. And the fact that so much of the narrative control is from India or Indians in the United States of America, and that we have precursors coming from India, I'm starting to think that India is doing this. And we have Americans right now that have such little faith in our country that they are willing to make a life making podcasts saying it's all about Pakistan. They take money to lie about why people die. Or they say it's all Trump's fault. Or it's all Israel's fault. It's really quite amazing. But here we are. So there was a settlement. Eventually, Purdue Pharma is going out of business. They are making another replacement company. And there is today still almost no discussion at a national level about the severity of the problem. And then people such as Candace Owens, who is a horrible, horrible human being for taking money to lie about why people die. There are people that will be dead tomorrow because Candace Owens takes money to smile and look into a camera. Imagine how horrible and depraved of a human being you need to be to say that Candace Owens is doing a good thing right now by focusing everyone on this Epstein stuff. There's hundreds of thousands of people right now that, if given a choice, would rather their child have had a bad experience with Epstein but still be alive than dead. But they won't allow anyone to hear that side of the coin. They are pushing this idea that it's all about compromise, and that's it. And if you don't want to talk about Epstein, then obviously you support horrible things. It's amazing what a depraved, just loser you would need to be to actually suggest that Candace Owens is helping anyone. Think of how many children are losing their parents right now. We have classrooms here in Massachusetts, whole classrooms, if you can get enough kids at a grade level, that have lost a parent of a drug overdose. But, it just can't get any attention because Candace Owens says we need to focus on Epstein and these Epstein letters. That's amazing. It's amazing. I mean, it's almost as if you did a series, promoting Candace Owens as a savior, I wouldn't be surprised to look in your video history and see that you only talked about Pakistan as if Pakistan is the source of the problem and never said a negative thing about India. That's exactly what I would expect because, well, that's probably where the components are actually coming from, India. And India is the one that is gaining right now. Anyways, they're finally having these hearings right now, and it would get some visibility, but again, we are all being encouraged to focus on the nonsense of the day. They're talking about Epstein. They're talking about letters. There's open discussion right now as to whether or not if someone says that I'm attracted to girls, does that mean that they're attracted to 5-year-olds? That is where we're at right now. Hence, mainstream media and lamestream media and alt media and the vast majority of citizen journalists right now are all working against your interests and are all taking money in ways from unknown faces, which are going to result in more deaths. And I don't know what to do other than to continue to broadcast the message to you that it's not going to stop until you have people put the most important things at the top of the list. This Epstein thing will never get resolved. You do know that. It will never get resolved. There will never be a day where everything comes out. There's always going to be something else found behind the file cabinet. There's always going to be another redaction. The story is about distracting you. And in fact, I suspect that the very same forces that are behind making the fentanyl that buried your children out there right now are also fueling the citizen journalists to say, let's just keep focusing on Epstein. If someone actually cared about children, they would want the drug epidemic spoken of because they don't want children losing parents. If someone cared about children and child prostitution, instead of talking about Epstein, who's been dead now for years, I guess, 8 years, 10 years, I don't even know anymore, they would realize that the number one thing that compels people to go into prostitution right now, in particular young adults, is usually broken families and drug addiction. But no one will talk about it. There will be children selling their bodies tomorrow because Candace Owens can't take the day and talk about what's important. Every time you turn on Candace Owens, you are saying that you support children going into child prostitution. That's you. Every time you watch Candace Owens, that's you saying that you support children losing parents of drug overdoses. That's you. That's you. And it doesn't matter how many flags you wave, that is you being involved in the torture and the injury and the death of America. That's you. Every time you watch, every time you click, every time you share, Candace Owens in particular, she is the enemy of the United States of America, in particular, her staff is. And I believe her hiring staff, which includes Harvey Weinstein and Steve Bannon, have been grooming her for years for this very role, to help put the knife into the back of the United States of America. That said, if India really was one of the major sources of all of these pharmaceutical products, I would expect them to use it against other nations as well. And, well, sure enough, there's one nation that has it even worse than the United States of America, and it's Pakistan. Now, I've seen various numbers on coming out of Pakistan, okay? It's very hard to validate. But this is from Pakistan itself. The numbers from India are actually that suggest Pakistan doesn't have as big of a problem. Pakistan itself claims to have about 700 people dying a day of a drug overdose. That would mean that they have 250,000 deaths a year, 250,000. Now, they have a high birth rate, so their overall population is still growing. All right, so demographically, it is having an impact. It means millions and millions and millions of people are not going to be alive in the future because people which could be having more kids are dying today. Nonetheless, though, because of their large portion of the population that is young, in particular like 18 and under, they are still going to have a healthy, by global standards anyways, population growth. That said, it is curious that one of the other mortal enemies of India is having a drug overdose problem. While India power creeps into Canada, which has a fatal drug overdose problem, and into the United States, which has a fatal drug overdose problem, matter of fact, the National Institutes of Health, our health institutes in the United States of America are currently run by an Indian national who cannot explain why life expectancy is going down in the United States of America. He doesn't understand it, even though fentanyl precursors come from his very own country. Do you see what I'm saying? We have an Indian NIH director, an Indian national. He can't even wash the smell of the curry off his skin. Seriously, he can barely speak English well in the United States of America, unable to say why life expectancy is going down. It is the worst, the most horrifying political appointment of all time. It really is. But no one will talk about it precisely because of Candace Owens and the promotion that we need to be talking about something else. Exactly. And that's exactly where the money, I think, comes from. Everyone's saying buy gold, put your money into gold ETFs. India is the largest consumer of gold. Kind of makes a whole lot of sense, doesn't it? Everybody wins. Thank you, Shannon Joy. Everybody wins. So this has been out there for a while, and I guess this is just me closing the loop today. Now it makes sense. It never understood why Pakistan in particular had this problem. Now, it is represented as Pakistan has this problem because Pakistan is full of crooked doctors, and then Pakistan is just crude, and it's Muslims and whatever, and there's very little insight into it. Google search and AI will get very mad if you insinuate that the problem is from India. That's interesting because I think a lot of Google AI results are actually pre-written for us in India. That would make a lot of sense. In fact, I think artificial intelligence, AI, really stands for actually Indian. There is no artificial intelligence. It's just a bunch of people in India working cheap, making their computers and their algorithms look really smart. And then they can hype up companies with a bunch of pre-programmed results. Stock goes up, and then they can short sell and then get out. It's an incredible business model. Of course, no one will ever look into it because we have Indians and mostly running our FBI right now and our other crime department. I guess it definitely wouldn't have happened if we had the former vice president of the United States, who is Indian, as the president right now. And then the president before that, Obama, his primary interest area was what? That's right. It was India. That's right. Now it makes sense. Fortunately, we have J.D. Vance, who during his campaign spoke about awareness of drug problems, but no longer talks about it. Maybe because his Indian wife, after getting to meet Prime Minister Modi in India, was told, look, you can't talk about that anymore. Instead, we have J.D. Vance in interviews right now, Vice President J.D. Vance, with just vague saying, well, life expectancy is just getting shorter. It just kind of stinks, and it's making people mad. That's it. No, you can't say anything. And I hope I did offend somebody, because if saying something negative about someone smelling like curry is more upsetting than 1 million drug overdose deaths just in the United States of America, just from fentanyl and other opioids over the last 14 years or so. That's not all. Remember, we have 120,000 fatal drug overdoses a year. Our baseline is 18,500. When we had more young people, then I think the problem is with you. The problem is with you. Because this shouldn't be a surprise. And as my logo says, okay, it's overdose awareness. Overdose awareness. I don't believe there's any solution to the opioid epidemic in the United States of America without people being aware of the number of fatal drug overdoses and being reminded of it on a regular basis. Unfortunately, people will die tomorrow, and more children will probably have to lose a parent or go into child prostitution to pay for their addictions, because Candace Owens and the people that say Candace Owens is good, like Ian Carroll, for example, won't allow this issue. They take money to hide this issue from you to ensure more people die and more people will have to prostitute themselves. We can save the United States of America, but we can't save it until the most important issues are being spoken of every day. Every day. So, that's my quick highlight for the day. I'll give you more news about the whatever is agreed to from the Purdue hearings when they're done. You won't hear about it anywhere else because everyone else is making sure you don't realize that overdoses are a problem in the United States of America. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Thank you. Take care, and God bless.